Welcome to Dance to Heal. I'm your host, Jenny C. Cohen. Join me as I share stories of how dance and movement can bring healing in a way that is safe and tailored to your life. I'm a cancer survivor, mother of two, and an award-winning performer who found that movement was vital to my recovery. I created Dance to Heal Wellness and also authored the best-selling book, Outside in Recovery, Dancing My Way Back to Myself After Breast Cancer. I will bring new techniques to help you on your dance journey and healing path. Are you ready to move? Dance to Heal starts now. Audience members, you are in for such a special treat. Veronica, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Jenny. I appreciate you.
All right, so listen. Most of you who are listening, I know whether or not you've ever had a debilitating or life type of event that devastated you, most of us don't see the correlation between healing of self from whatever is happening in the world or to you. We all survived the pandemic, folks. Just be aware of that, just to give everyone a little reference. We don't see the correlation between that and access to more than financial success or money access than the bare necessities. And this is why Veronica's here. Tell us a little bit about what your mission is for people to understand what money mastery is.
So my mission is really to empower empires. What drives me is for people seeing in themselves what they don't see about themselves. Because I see in them something they don't see in themselves. And I like to empower that, to find what that is, how they can be empowered, remove those limitations that they have about what they cannot be, and for them to build that empire, whatever that means for them. The empire looks different for me, but for some people, it could be anything from building an empire in a house where you get 10 kids, God bless them, to building a multi-million-dollar company, to building a multi-successful charity and foundation, right? It's all about giving back, and I want to enable and empower that people that want to enable and empower others and do good and give back.
I love that. I heard an interview, which I will cite later. I don't want to waste time trying to search for it in my head, where a person on a podcast spoke about that every single person, we have inherent value to give to this existence. And when we deny that, we are actually robbing the world of healing and progress. And I really love that you see an empire in every one of you, audience, whether you're listening or watching us in our matching pinks and reds on the screen of YouTube. All right. Usually I have bangs, but today I had to have no bangs for my interview with Veronica. So I could be like, Veronica Asian version. Because here's the thing, right? A lot of times we're not taught this stuff. We're not taught it. I kind of observe my parents running a restaurant. Most people who have restaurants, they have two sets of books, by the way, just so you know. Like what you report and what you don't report, right? And that's all I know. I never learned actually, right, how to understand there's an energy to manifestation and prosperity. There's a vibration. Most of us grow up from cycles of poverty. How does one even understand that you have a cycle of poverty, Veronica?
I was literally talking about this with a client today because my client believed that he had an abundant mindset, right? And I gave him this example of somebody that's fit. What do they have to do to get there, right? What do they have to believe?
Mm-hmm.
They had to have all these different things in order to get there. And the reason why they're there is because they believe that. So how do you know that you have an abundance versus scarcity or poverty mindset? It's, are you financially where you think you should be or where you envisioned yourself to be? If you're not, you have a mindset. problem with money. And here, let me just validate everyone for a second. It doesn't matter if you grew up rich or poor, you still have something to work through in your money mindset. Like I know people from all walks of life, even myself. And it doesn't matter how much money you grow up with, there's always going to be that lack of access to whatever that you wanted that made you think differently. And then there's the conditioning of the world, right? Then later on, when you go and you're like, well, how can I make more money? Like, let me just go into a job. And then you start saying, like, okay, for me, it was like, well, I think 100K is a good salary. And then I was like, hold on, I understand why I have such scarcity mindset around everything. And I was very blessed that I grew up in a home that nothing lacked. But I was like, why do I have such scarcity mindset? It's because I limit my potential, I limit my capacity by saying I'm agreeing to whatever somebody else thinks I'm worth. So I'm not going in there, kind of like a sales job. They essentially can bring in whatever that they want. But then when you have that worker mentality opposed to an entrepreneurship mentality, which I don't think everybody should be an entrepreneur, but you get paid how much value you bring to the table. Because when you allow somebody else to dictate your value, whether that is because your customers say that it's too much money or not, or whether you work a corporate job and you get this certain amount because that's a position that you're applying to, then you cap your self-worth and you start getting money problems because you think the world is limited to that. And it was not until I realized that 100K is nothing to earn a year, not being insensitive, but it's just I'm seeing the possibilities. I understand that multiple people don't, like majority of the population don't live with that salary a year. And at one point I thought that was a lot, but now I don't think it's anything because I know the possibility. Do you know how much money there's trillions of the government is in $1 billion debts and people think that it's so hard to get money. No, you're just not providing enough value to get that. So I think if you want to have a how do you know if you have a scarcity mindset is are you financially where you want to be and are you capping yourself to whatever level you think that you will actually get whatever level you actually think you're going to get paid.
Oh, yes, yes, preach this. Oh my gosh, stay up on that box. So, I was at a live event last Friday and someone put up their hand at Q&A and said, what do I do if, I can't afford this, whatever they were offering. And the person who is a local teacher, speaker, self-improvement person, flat out just said, well, if you're still stuck, that means you haven't implemented anything that you bought. And you may not need to buy it again because you're not learning the lesson. You're not applying it. Whatever you already bought wasn't meant for you to buy. You didn't use it. It's just going to be a little bit more of an expensive lesson for you. And I went, oh, I feel called out because most of us, right? When I first started being an entrepreneur, not even understanding the work internally that I had to go first and or concurrently, right? I just thought if
Yeah.
I work hard, I'll make money. If I work hard, I'll make money, not realizing, it's more than that. What loops are we stuck in that we didn't know we were stuck in? And it is a process. There's what is that? They say the hardest is the first like 5 years, because once you get past it, right, you've now learned what systems work for you. You learn to implement, you learn to test, you learn to kind of put your head down and not be distracted. Because most of the time we're distracted, and so we don't stay true to the course,
Yeah.
right?
It's and I even think at every point of the stage, like I like to call it the shiny object syndrome, right?
My
That you're
shiny
like a
come back with
squirrel.
yes,
Yes,
exactly.
I love that. I love that. But it's kind of like squirrel. You're like, oh, new idea. I can make money. So you start chasing it, and then you're just chasing a variety of things, and you have no focus. And after 5 years, like, yeah, you should have something established that you can already diverse, but nobody got financial freedom from diversifying their time and their money in multiple projects. Think about anything, even like Amazon. They did one thing until they got to the revenue. Now they can sell a variety of things. They can add a whole different type of services, but you start with one product. Every single company, even Apple, they started with the iPhone. Then they added other things. But it's a lot of us just we have this thing where we want to do everything that can bring us in. And it's like, what is truly in alignment and what will get you further? So I'm 100% with you. I think the first years of entrepreneurship are hard because a lot of people also find a lot of things about themselves, and they haven't worked through blocks that they've had before that essentially stops them from moving forward. And I think all of us have a relationship where one of the core beliefs is not feeling good enough. So I think a lot of us have also that relationship of wherever, you don't think you're good enough if somebody says no to you in entrepreneurship, right? So then we start internalizing that. And so it's like this perpetuating where you're like self-sabotaging essentially.
Mm-hmm. I love that. When someone says no to us, we don't realize it just means the quicker you get through your no's, you start getting to your yeses. It's a numbers game for most of
Yeah.
us, which is normal, right? If someone says no, thank you, we think we're being rejected as the person. It's just the
Mhm.
idea that you're approaching that person, and not everyone is your ideal client. That can apply to friendships too, or groups you want to be a part of, jobs in the future. Even if you're okay with not being an entrepreneur, you still have to be aware that there'll be settings that are not a good fit for you, and whether or
Yeah.
not you reject it, right? If they reject you, that is a no for you at this time.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think it's beautiful because it actually, and I have such a deep trust in, the universe and God that for me, like, I know it's like perfect. Thank you for making clear that I was blind, that that was not meant for me. That energetic exchange wasn't meant for me. So thank you for that rejection. Because if you think like, let's not think about clients, like let's think something that is we take sometimes more or less personal, but dating, right? You think that if that person doesn't want to date you or after a date they like ghost you, you take it personal. And it's not about you. It's just you were just not for them, or you don't possess the qualities that they look for. It doesn't mean that you're not good for somebody else. It just means that is not a match for you and that was not aligned.
I love that reminder because most of the time, especially these days, there is a negative connotation when it's a polite no, whether or not they go out of their way to say to you, no, thank you, right? I love that because, there are times when you go into a new setting and you want to be a part of this clique or group of people, and they all kind of politely turn their backs to you because no one's has overtly mean has in high school, right? Grown-ups have another level of being politely ignoring you, and if you're really present in your body, which is what I love to work on with my clients, you have to then go, is this really what I want? Do I really want to be with these people? And usually the answer is no, even before they've turned their backs on you, right? Because I think that's really important. And there is a benefit to being able to take a no because that builds grit. That
Mm-hmm.
gets you resilient. And
Mm-hmm.
that's okay for people to say no because you're always going to say yes to yourself. That's what I think, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So for someone who has identified they have a block, right? Folks, if you need to look out and reach out to Veronica, she is available on all social media platforms. There will be a link directly to her gift for you in the descriptor of this episode. I just want to make sure it's clear. We're not just talking hypothetically and she's going to throw you some little trinkets and be like, "Okay, you're off on your way." Both of us are completely reachable to you. Feel free to reach out to us. We just want to start the thought process going for you that where you are now may not be where you're destined to be,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're listening to this particular episode because something needs you to pay attention to that. And we're asking you to sit with that and then seek out some answers. Most of us, right? Most of us are actually still struggling to pay bills, still struggling to figure out how I want this passion, or at least I don't know where to go other than this passion. Case in point, let me explain. I have a son who just graduated from college. He has a ballet degree. He's still working through some trauma issues with the ballet program, right? And so he's dealing with the issue of, oh, am I failing if I don't do dance because I have a degree in it? And we're letting him work through it. All the things have been set up. However, he has graduated from college and he has type 1 diabetes. So he needs to have some income coming in because we now have to figure out insurance for him, right? And I'm an entrepreneur now, and I've had all the training. I can coach my kids really easily, Veronica. It's whether or not they want to listen, right?
Yeah.
However, we brainstormed an idea. If anyone is aware of a therapy technique called soul cards, people will do cards to ask their subconscious questions and have those answers for themselves. It has to do with left hand, right hand writing. The point of it is Danny is an incredible artist, and he had made soul cards before that he
Mhm.
realized, oh, you mean people would want to use these to help them interpret their thoughts? And we're like, yeah, because when he showed it to the therapist like, oh my gosh, these would be perfect. Like, your thought about this feeling, your thoughts about this feeling, how great it would
Mhm.
be for other people to have access to these cards. Anyway, it's that easy. It's that easy, Mom. And we're like, yeah, it shouldn't be that. You're not supposed to work that hard. Like, what a limiting belief, right? So I
Yeah,
bring this to, right? So, Veronica, sometimes it's not supposed to be that hard for a person to shift into something that they're meant to
yeah,
do.
1000%. I'm with you. And some people think it has to be hard because that's the belief that people grow up with, right? You think you have to work hard to earn the income that you want. And in reality, sounds cliche. I don't know if you have to work smart, but you just have to be passionate about what you do because everything feels hard if you're not passionate about it. Trust me, anything. If you're somebody that doesn't like cooking, cooking seems hard. But if you're somebody that loves cooking, you can spend 8 hours in the kitchen and you're not burnt out, right? Everybody works these jobs, and nowadays there's so many burnt out coaches, which God bless them. But in my opinion, you're not burnt out anymore because you're doing something that you're like, right? How did you stop being burnt out? It wasn't through like all this like psychological turnaround. It was really by you aligning with what you do and you feeling like you're doing something meaningful and purposeful. Like if you, I'm all about purpose, passion, and profit. The three P. It has to be aligned so that you feel that you're doing something that's greater, that you're fulfilling something that's in your need. It has to be something that you're passionate about because I don't want to do any dull work. I do not care. I'd rather do $50,000 as an entrepreneur than 500,000 as a or $1 million working for somebody else because I will not let somebody dictate my cap potential and I only have upside from here. And then profits because nobody wants to work for free and nobody should work for free. We live in a materialistic world. You have all the rights to get everything that you want. So in
Because,
my mind,
yeah, go ahead.
it's not that hard. You just have to figure out what is it that you love and what is it that you bring uniquely. Like when you were talking about your son doing, this um I don't know exactly what you do. The cards, the soul
Yeah, the
cards.
soul cards.
Yeah. So I can't remember. I heard this in a podcast of one of my mentors, but he was interviewing this guy from a company that's like literally like note cards. And it just says like, what are your three like main activities for today? Something like that. And it grew up to be like $1 million company. Something that simple. Note cards have been around for years. This to do, it's around for years. But it's just it's how he uses the simple like little things. Like he knows that having it physically there, people have the satisfaction of crossing it out. So how did he reach? And I can't remember, but the time that was pretty insane. It was a very short time, and I would have never thought that that would come true. But let me tell you something: people pay big money for things. Price is the biggest myth. Money is the biggest myth. Money and price is just an exchange of do you see the value or not? Whether it is a coaching program working with me, do you think what you need to pay is worth the value because you'll get the results, or it can be anything in the grocery. Do I actually even like an avocado? You're not gonna, you will pay $505 for an avocado. But if you
Mhm.
don't like avocado, you wouldn't pay 50 cents. Doesn't the price is literally a myth. But if I sell you that avocado for 10 cents, you would still buy it because you're like, okay, cool, I'll take that.
Mhm. 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 I love that. I love that. Oftentimes people think of money as this physical thing, and it's important to remember money is actually energy exchange,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because people won't value if you're giving things away. They just take it for granted. They really do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying, folks, listening, listen, we're not saying you can't be a good Samaritan. All right. And if someone was a good Samaritan everywhere, they would not have funds to live in a house or food to feed themselves. So then they couldn't last very long as a good Samaritan. I
Mm-hmm.
used to struggle with this because I'd be like, well, everyone needs to heal. I want to save the world. And my mentors, who I gave a lot of money to, would remind me. And what do we do when your well is empty, Jenny? How many people can you really help? And you're right, because I have girlfriends who do not have funds for breast cancer treatment. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm only able to give them $100 here and $100 there. If I was in a more powerful situation, I could give them my whole program for free. I could fund 2 cycles of chemo for them instead of them
Mm-hmm.
having to ask piecemeal for people through the GoFundMe, trying to piece
Mm-hmm.
things together, right? Be aware, audience, as you're listening to this, what is piquing your interest? And I want to venture to say, if you're getting mad at anything we're saying, I want you to look at that. I want you to look at it because we're
Yeah.
not allowed to talk about it, right? We don't ever really talk about this, Veronica. Like, you need to you deserve to be paid what you're really worth. And what is your
Yeah.
worth? And those people are like, oh, no, no, I'm happy with that. What is it? Pay for per hour?
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with that. And I'm like, really? You're okay if you were to calculate not just the hours at work, the prep time to get ready for work, the travel time. I know when we're still in a little bit of the residual lockdown, so some people still working from home and don't have to wear pants, right, to their Zoom rooms. At the same time, most of people have gone back into physical jobs. So you still
Mm-hmm.
require, besides the hours you're being charged outside of that, the prep time to do the work. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
being paid $25 an hour, it's not $25 an hour. If you average all the prep time, the travel time, any additional work you're doing outside of that 1 hour that you're reporting for work, it's no longer $25 an hour. It's maybe $5 an hour, $10 an hour. I don't think anyone should be paid less than, $500 an hour. Less than, because we're all worth that, even if people don't necessarily see that themselves.
I I I agree and disagree.
Hmm.
I think you need to have obviously a certain skill set because in the end, the outer world will determine what you're worth based on the value that you bring.
Hmm.
But if you bring enough value, absolutely that's the bare minimum, right?
Hmm.
So I'm with you.
It's a relationship, right? Because as a mom, moms per hour are worth a minimum of $500 an hour because we're raising a child. Do we get paid
Yeah.
anything? No. We're lucky if we get room and board, some budget for clothing occasionally if we can, get to Walmart. Like, honest talk, right? The majority of moms, we're not paid
Yeah.
per hour. We're not even paid per day. We're not even paid per week, right? And
Hmm.
so when I gave a dollar value amount, I was actually curious, audience, did you get a reaction to that? Right? I love the fact that
Yeah.
Veronica was like, well, if you give value, and for me, everyone has inherent value. And it depends
Yeah.
on who's looking at you. And I'm asking you, before anyone else reflects value on you, where is your value? And
1000%.
right, if you see you're worth $500 an hour, but you were okay with, oh, but I'm okay. I don't mind being paid $50 an hour. I'm okay with that. That's a different thing, right?
Hmm.
Because someone doesn't want to give $500 of value. They're really happy, truly happy, working a job, $50 an hour, doing this one job, because outside of it, they're giving value to other things. They're volunteering. They might be retired, right? And if you're not okay with it and you want more, what value are you giving out? And then what value do you value yourself?
Yeah,
Those are married, right?
1000%. Yeah, I always say that your net worth is your self-worth. However much you think you're worth, it's probably it's close to what your net worth is. And the funny thing about that is that that even comes down to the self-worth of how much you even think you should be worth, your net value. Because sometimes people, I know they produce $500,000 a year,
Yeah.
and they don't even know how they're going to pay for their kids' school next month, right? Let alone be able to invest in a coach, because they literally don't know what they're going to do. So some people have a bucket, right? And they have a lot pouring in, right? But that bucket and that mindset is so broken, and it has so many holes, even like dopamine, that you're trying to impress others. So you go out and you spend in that way, or you feel you can't sit down with your thoughts. So a lot of us go and like numb ourselves with alcohol or interactions and go and socialize because you can't sit down for yourself. And by all means, yes, we all have to socialize. We are human beings, we are socials. But do you also sit down with your thoughts? Because I know for the longest time I didn't. And so all of those little areas that you could improve in yourself, those are all holes in your bucket. And the more areas of your life that you haven't fixed that relationship with, the more areas where you haven't worked on your mindset, your money mindset, your relationship mindset, everything, the more holes that bucket will have.
Oh,
And then it will
bingo.
just keep pouring out. It doesn't matter how much money you make. I know people, I was able to save, making mid 5 figures. I was able to save 6 figures in a year or 2 years. In like 2 years, right?
Yeah.
Why? Because my bucket, I was patching it and I was closing it up. Because it doesn't matter if you're making 5 figures, 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures. If you still have holes in that bucket, go and grab a bucket in your sink and make some holes to it. Doesn't matter the level of poorness that you pour into. If the buckets are as big, it basically ends up being nothing.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. Thank you. Because we're always like, fill your well, fill your well. I made the discovery my well was cracked on the bottom. So it didn't matter how much I filled it. It just seeped out the bottom. Like most of my healing has been shoring up the bottom of the well and then kind of cleaning up the sides, right? Because a lot of times we inherit buckets and wells that were never whole to begin with. And we're really asking you, audience, think about that. How whole is your bucket? How strong is the bottom of your well and the walls of your well? So that as you start to fill, how much of it will you retain versus, just leaking out all of the holes, All right, audience. I could talk with Veronica like much longer, and then my editor of my podcast will throw me out a window. So we're going to have you come back. Will you come back, please? Because I think we just touched on the base of this a tiny bit. I want to kind of pull this apart a little bit. Audience, your homework from this episode is think about, do you have holes? The answer is yes. Do you have holes?
We all do.
We all do. Like she does, I do, we both do. And because we're aware of it, we're patching it. Do you have a system of patching your holes? Do you need to reach out to Veronica or myself? Feel free on the bottom, especially on the YouTube. If you have questions, ask us. We'll go back and we'll answer them. Okay? Veronica, thank you so much for coming. It was such a pleasure to have a chit chat with you.
Thank you for having me, Jenny.
All right, audience. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to Dance to Heal with Jenny C. Cohen. Come back next time to hear stories of recovery through movement and learn more ways that you can move your body. To work with me and continue your journey, visit OutsideInRecovery.com. Are you ready to move?